is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, a wonderful New Year's Eve. Back here with some more Resident Evil content for you. And today I'm going to be doing, I guess, my channel tradition now. As last year I made a video on New Year's Eve that got a lot of comments and feedback. I really appreciate that, and I can only hope this one can get half as much. And I was originally going to be making something completely different, but because of a certain video I watched just recently, about a week ago, I've decided to change my mind completely and delve into this because I feel like this would be the more fruitful video to make. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, I made a post about it in my community post, but I'll just mention it right now if you haven't noticed or know anything about it. But I want to give a quick shout out, and I guess a shout out throughout this video, to the Bengal Dragon, as he released one of his latest videos talking about the differences between Code Veronica X and the Dark Side Chronicles. But while you go in there listening to that, you come out with so much more, and I'm going to reference his video a lot in this one because there's so many good parts to it, and it is a long video, I will warn you, but I promise you, you definitely will come out with so much information, stuff that you probably wouldn't even think of or even perceive, or a lot of stuff probably going past you didn't even realize. But my point is, there's a lot of good stuff, but one of the major things talked about in that video is the reason why I'm going to be making this video, because I feel like it's something that Resident Evil has lacked for a long time, and I really would like to see them delve into it with its core cast of major characters, as we've seen them take baby steps in the past using this, but never really commit, with the exception of one game. And I really think they can do a lot and even have that payoff of eventually doing things like this. So what is this I'm talking about? One of the big arguments about the core cast of characters like Chris, Leon, Jill, Claire, and Ada is the fact that most people, while they like the characters, don't want to see them for newer Resident Evil titles. And that's another thing. I'm talking about the newer titles, not the remakes. Not that you can't do them in the remakes, but they're already stories you've already seen before. In newer Resident Evil titles, we can't use them because they're too overpowered. They're too powerful, and nothing is going to be a challenge to them. And I completely disagree on that, because once again, challenge is what you make of it. And it doesn't matter how experienced they are, there can always be a challenge for them. But the problem is with Resident Evil games, they very rarely do anything outside of the physical challenge of what they're fighting. And let's just be honest, what haven't they fought at this point? They've faced every type of virus and plaga parasite, and you name it. They've faced so many things. Not that they can't come out with new things, but my point is that they have faced so many things in the history of Resident Evil. And I just feel like, what better way to challenge him? And I'm not saying that to take away the physical challenge. That's always going to be there. It is a video game. But I just feel like there's a huge plethora of something they really haven't delved and tapped into that they could challenge him, making it basically pointless, the argument, oh, you can't have the core cast in games and not have it be, fruitful and fearful and have them have a challenge. And before I mention it, I want to give you an example. Just picture a police officer, for example. Alright, I'm no police officer, don't have any connection to police force, but if you are, let me know what you feel about this. Is that, let's say you're a police officer for about 20 years. Do you ever get to the point where you're just like, you know everything because you've been there for so long, that every day is basically this routine towards you, and that like you're always in a relaxed, calm state? And the answer, I would hope, is no, because you don't know how every day is going to go. Even all those years of experience, you're always in that point where you got to be on edge, you got to be on alert, because he who hesitates is lost forever. And you never know how a day that might seem routine, normal, might change in a heartbeat. And I'm pretty sure so many officers got stories like that. And the point is that you always got to be mentally at your finest. And that's where I want Resident Evil to delve into its characters. I want them to find ways, psychologically and mentally, to delve into their psyche, find things that would mentally break them, and put them in situations where it's more a mental game than it will ever be a physical one. In short, I want Capcom to rip apart and mentally fracture and psychologically scar and break our fan favorite characters so that we can have an even deeper understanding and appreciate them as they go through their newer Resident Evil titles with these things intact, and kind of a lot similar in terms of a Silent Hill style, if you catch my drift. And I just feel like it's an element that really needs to be added. They've taken baby steps in the past, but I believe if they fully delve into psychological issues, they can really have one of, if not the greatest Resident Evil experiences of all time. So let's get started. Let's start with Leon, Resident Evil's most popular character, as well as my second favorite character within the franchise. And one of the things I do want to mention is most of my things I want to see are things from Leon in his latest incarnation. So I will mention things from earlier titles, but I want to focus more on how he is right now in his latest point compared to what he's been doing in the early titles. But I will mention some things. So one of the things I have liked in the remakes, I like how Leon is in Resident Evil 4 Remake, because I honestly feel like one of the best things about the remakes is, in terms of Leon, is I feel like the Leon from Remake 2 and the Leon from Remake 4 are a better connection than the original OG Resident Evil 2 Leon to the OG Resident Evil 4 Leon. I don't feel like those characters are the same characters. Not in terms of they change, but I feel like they're two different types of characters. And I think that's a statement that a lot of people would agree with. But my point is, I like the fact that how they used a lot of things from Resident Evil 2 to piggyback off of in the remake to Resident Evil 4 Remake. You know, I said it before when I did my, analyzing of certain scenes in Remake 4, is that I love the introduction to Resident Evil 4 Remake, talking about how that day, basically to this day, still sticks in Leon's mind. How I love the line, "The cop in me died that day," basically saying that the Raccoon City incident killed Leon's any type of life he may have had, his innocence, his naivety. It basically forced him to grow up. And I love that, and I love the fact how Leon was just really kind of on edge and anal about this mission in terms of saving people, because he doesn't want to repeat what happened in Resident Evil 2 Remake where he didn't save anyone. But those are things I did like, but I want to analyze things, what's going on right now. So I want to focus on the CGI movies, his latest incarnations in Resident Evil Vendetta and Resident Evil Death Island. Now, I'll be the first one to admit I was not a big fan of how Vendetta did Leon at first when it first came out, because I was basically looking at it like, oh, it's just doing what happened to Chris and turning him into basically a drunk at certain points, trying to lose him on the booze. But as I guess I got older and time went on, I began to realize that there was more to it than meets the eye. And I really actually, maybe it could have been executed a lot better, but I actually like the fact that we had a Leon like this. Because the problem I've always had with Leon is it always seems like he's always the same in a lot of the game. He's always that cheerful, in a good mood, cracking jokes. And while I do like that, I just feel like there need to be more depth to him. Something that really challenges him, makes him act a little different based on circumstances. So I liked what happened in Vendetta and what it could lead to. Having Leon basically question, why are we even doing this? Like, what's even the point? I'm tired of it. And I even liked in Death Island where the one villain basically surmised something where, and once again, I know most people didn't care for the main villain of Death Island. I just liked what he implied, and basically saying that, like, I guess hyperanalyzing every main character from the group, saying, like, things that he could use to attack them or things that could mess them up in the future. And with Leon, basically something we all can relate to, just being burnt out. He always jokes he needs a vacation, but being burnt out is something that we all can relate to in life. Being tired of our job or I got burnt out with games last year. That's something that's never happened to me, and I just needed a break from it all, and I went away for a couple months. And I've never had that in my entire almost 3-decade, 30 years experience of playing video games. I've never had that until last year, so it was quite a moment for me. But you get to that point in anything, so your job or whatever it is you might be doing, you just burn out from it and you need to get away from it. And Leon was questioning that stuff. In Death Island, he's obviously a lot more cheerful, and I remember the guy voicing him was saying in an interview that Matthew Mercer, that basically the big difference between him from Vendetta and to Death Island, why he's so much more cheerful, is just that having that camaraderie. I remember talking about this in my video about Leon and Death Island. He had that camaraderie within, people that could understand how he feels, because he's usually a lot of times all alone with little to minimum contact with someone helping him. And having someone like Chris, and I mentioned this before, having Chris, another male person in his life, because let's face it, we always talk about Leon and his women, but he doesn't have a lot of male figures in his life, because unfortunately all of them have all bit the dust. Have had an impact on him, like Marvin or Luis or Krauser. People that had a big impact on Leon's life, they all have unfortunately bit the dust and died. And Chris is one of the few male figures in his life that he can really, I guess you can call bros, that can really understand, have that kind of bromance with each other. And I feel like Chris did a lot for Leon and just making him feel like, hey, I get it, I understand how you feel, and you're not alone in this whole thing. And that, honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing a tag team with them in a video game, possibly, just seeing how they would bounce off and interact with each other. I think it'd be really special, and because they're both kind of at that point in their life, they've been doing this for so long, and they're wondering, is there really an end in sight? Is there is there a light at the end of the tunnel? And with Leon, he's questioned it multiple times, but what can they do with Leon in future games? That's what I want to get to. What can they do to really challenge him and break him? And I think it's real simple, obviously. Leon, I don't think, is a guy that wants to do this for his entirety of his life. And I think what can really tear him apart or keep him torn is the fact that he obviously wants to serve his duty and do his duty to people that he cares about, protect people from whatever bioterrorist threats going on or something in government. But obviously he's probably getting sick and tired of just taking orders and being told to go here or do this, and wants to do something for himself. And I feel like he could be torn apart from possibly entering retirement and just trying to enjoy his life, or just being forced to come back. Maybe someone he cares about or people he's interacted and teamed up with before need his help, and he's just torn between just wanting to enjoy the rest of his life instead of just fighting nonstop. And I feel like these are elements that can really delve into, because we can all relate to that. We need a break from things, and sometimes we just want to move on past things, and it's hard, especially when we're so duty bound. And Leon, let's just face it, ever since Raccoon City, he's kind of been just forced to go wherever the forces that be to tell him to go. The government, agency, whatever you want to think of. It just seems like he never gets a break from it. And honestly, I always wonder if maybe the way he jokes and does that is just kind of like a mechanism just to keep his mind off of the burnout and the drag that goes with his job, and just trying to keep in a positive mood. And that's just me speculating. I don't have evidence to support that, but I've always wondered that maybe that's why he's like that. And I can relate to that, because I'm kind of that way too. When I'm in a bad situation, or I'm just like doing something that I really don't want to do, I just try to make the most of a bad situation by trying to stay positive, or keep the mood in the area more fun, just so we're not all dragged down, dumbed down, or depressed or something. But honestly, there's a lot they can do with Leon. I'm really curious what they're ultimately going to do with him. And hopefully, and who knows, maybe they can even have a resolution between him and a certain other individual. But I'm going to save that one for later, if you catch my drift. I want to move on to the next character on this list. Next up, we have Claire Redfield. Now, guys, I don't do this any justice, so I'm going to try. But if you've watched the Bingo Dragons video, he does it a million times better than I can ever surmise. So I will leave a link in the description of this video. And it's long, but you can find so many moments in there talking about Claire and what she's gone through. As I said before, I think Claire is the most disrespected Resident Evil character, but she's easily the most mentally broken Resident Evil character on top of it. And the funny part is, I don't think a lot of people even realize that to begin with, or even understand why. And it all comes back for this game we keep talking about, this game that a lot of people want to see remade, and that's Code Veronica X. And I will say this right now, Claire's already broken. I don't know how much more we can do. I like to use this line at work a lot of times, is, even waterboarders give their victims a break every once in a while, but unfortunately not poor Claire. She's been suffering for this for 2 decades. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, Claire still hasn't gotten over the events from Code Veronica, and she is a mentally broken woman. And because of the events that happened at the end with Steve, and as I said, I don't do it any justice, but I'll surmise it as quickly as I can. Basically, Claire starts the game, basically running gung-ho into a Umbrella facility, which I think is just wild in its own right. And how does she leave? Basically a broken mess, especially with the events that transpire between her and Steve. And these are moments that she has not only not gotten over, she's even had so many moments where she's possibly hallucinated, as well as just, never really told anyone. She still keeps these memories, the moments that happened on that fateful day in Code Veronica X to herself, and she's never really opened up. And to me, it's not so much that I want to see ways to break her even more, even though I guess you could do that. I just want the payoff of all that because, as the Dragon said, everyone likes a good comeback story. And, well, this one's long overdue for over 2+ decades. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like, come on, Capcom. You had a lot of potential. I liked what you set up because I feel like, with Code Veronica X, it's probably easily the most misunderstood game in the franchise, but where's the payoff of it? And I just want a day where we can sit up there and see Claire finally overcome her past demons and maybe even possibly open up about it, because no one really knows, and that's the sad part about it. And I have an idea of what they can do and who she could possibly open up to, but I'm going to save that for a little bit later in the video because I do want to kill two birds with one stone, and it's something I've always wanted personally between these two characters because I love both these characters to death. But to me, I just want to see Claire get that resolution because she's suffered enough. I mean, when the Dragon said that Claire is probably the most human character in Resident Evil, I'm inclined to believe it because I honestly think she's the perfect character to continue doing a lot of games with. She's very cool and badass, but she's also believable and very human. Like, she's got a lot of humanity and human. And not to say the other characters don't, but I can buy her. I can believe her so much more. She's a believable badass. She's not just someone going in there, beating up everybody, shooting everything exploding. I think it's because of these moments with Claire and just how she's been broken and how I could buy and believe a lot of things that have happened to her that makes me resonate and follow with her even more than maybe some of the other characters. Not that the other characters can't have these moments. It's just that because of what Claire has gone through more than any other character and how she's just so mentally fractured and broken in a believable way that we can all understand, especially with having the Steve, it makes me cheer for her even more and want that inevitable comeback. As I said, you can still find ways to, I guess, break her even more if, somehow certain events trigger the past or God forbid if someone got a hold of this, what happened in Code Veronica X and just use it against her. That would be a really sadistic person. But the point is that Claire needs that redemption, that comeback, because she's suffering enough. I know we had other moments she's in, and so I liked her in Death Island. I like the scene with her in the cell, but I just want her to eventually overcome what the past has done to her and come out even stronger. And as I said, I'm going to come back to her in a moment. But until then, Capcom, come on. You can't torture Claire forever, Get her out of torture jail and just have her on the path of redemption. Please, for all of our sakes. But now let's move on to the next character. Next we have Jill Valentine. Now, I've said it before and I say it again. I think Jill is the most over-criticized character in the franchise because it doesn't matter what you do with her. It seems like everyone gets all vocal about it. Whether they like it or they hate it or it's all over the place or it's not the same person. But once again, I liked a lot of things that they've done with Jill. It's just that they haven't, that key word, had the payoff of them. Something that seems to be a running theme in this game. But take this scene, for example. The intro to the Resident Evil 3 remake. I love this intro. I think it had a lot of potential. With Jill waking up and basically seeing herself turn into a zombie and seeing things and basically pointing a gun to her head and basically waking up, realize it was a bad dream or nightmare. The problem with it is what is really the point of this sequence, because it's never brought up again. This scene ultimately is kind of pointless because other than that one sequence when she wakes up and dreams of Carlos turning and not being able to pull the trigger on him, the point is that none of this is ever used again in the game, and that's where I said having a payoff really is important and matters. Like, just imagine you're playing a game and randomly you start to hallucinate even more that you're turning, or because you do have the dormant virus within you, or maybe you start having flashbacks of your time in the mansion, a la like Evil Within, where you just be in one area and all of a sudden the entire environment just changes on a dime and you start reliving past events and stuff. And like, just imagine the potential of all of that. That's what they really lacked in Resident Evil Remake, especially when they start with that sequence there. And that's the frustrating part, and that's the thing where you're going to hear me say a lot, frustrating. And I'm just so frustrated by how they couldn't figure it out. It's like they just did the scene just to check off a box and that's it. No, keep it up. Now, when you're doing an angle in like wrestling or something, you just don't have the one promo and then you never do anything else. No, you keep it up. You continue it up. It's like saying, hey, you had Kane debut to fight The Undertaker. You had him debut at Bad Blood 1997. You have an excellent debut, if you know what I'm talking about. But then you just drop the whole thing and never do anything about it. No, you set it up. You set the brothers up eventually to collide and you have them fight at WrestleMania. But the problem here is that that's not what they did. They just decided to have this sequence for basically no reason. And that's the part that really frustrates me. You had a landmine of something you could really use to really challenge Jill mentally. We know Jill's going to kick ass and take names and chew bubblegum, as every Resident Evil character does, whoever you play as in a Resident Evil game. But mentally challenge them, put them to the breaking point so that we can appreciate these characters even more. But unfortunately, this isn't the only time they've kind of bumbled Jill. Let's take, for example, her latest incarnation in Death Island. People were really excited, as well as yours truly, of Jill coming back. And coming back in an entry past Resident Evil 5, because we were all wondering, what's Jill been up to? What's he like? And I want to go back to a sequence that a lot of people had a lot of problems with, and that is the whole firing range sequence between her and Chris. Now, I like this sequence a lot. I really do, because it really, from both characters' standpoints. And a lot of people didn't like it because, it's not Jill, it's a different Jill. Well, guys, I'm sorry to say this, but Jill is not the same person who walked into the mansion back in 1998. She's not, nor would I want her to be. I like the fact that she was very different. I like the fact because it shows that, through life experiences, people change. Instances mess up people. And I know some people use the argument, she had, 6 years of rehabilitation because Resident Evil 5, I believe it was 2009, and Death Island takes place in 2015. I said, if I'm wrong with the years, you can correct me down below. But the point is that, it's just 6 years. So yeah, plenty of time. Guys, look at all the other characters. Like I just said, basically Claire hasn't gotten over her stuff in Code Veronica. That's been 2 decades ago. Leon hasn't gotten over Raccoon City. He still references that. And look at all the things Chris still remembers. I mean, I don't want to hear the excuse, that's enough. Sometimes people never get over things. That's just real life stuff. Not, just in terms of a video game. And I like the fact that Jill came out, very bitter and vengeful, saying, after what I've been through and under Wesker's control, and to see that people are still doing this stuff, I'm not going to show these guys any mercy. And kind of came out very jaded because of it. And Chris, on the other hand, was more like, I get it, understand it. I'd probably do the same thing, run in there and be a little bit reckless, but I don't want to become numb to the pain after seeing so many of my comrades die, referencing peers there, and I like that sequence. The problem with it is they don't care. There's no payoff from that sequence. It's good on its own, but there's no payoff because of it. We never really see it brought up again. It just happens, and by the end of the movie, everyone just smiles and all. And I get it, you want to see your characters in a good mood, not a bad mood, but that's why I've always been more of a fan of this stuff being done in video games and not in CGI movies, because you have so much more time to do something in. And once again, I think Death Island's biggest problem is it's way too short, and it needed at least another 30 minutes to really flesh out a lot of those things and make these moments a lot more impactful. But the point still stands is that I still want to see Jill really be challenging that. Just think about it in a future event past Death Island. How could you really mentally scar and challenge Jill? And it's real simple, honestly. You don't even have to think too hard. you still have those moments of being under control of Wesker. At one point you were fighting against bioorganic weapons, and now you were basically aiding them and having the flashbacks of being under control. Because remember, she stated that, hey, even though I was under his control, I still knew what was going on. So she was perfectly aware of what was going on. How does that deal with a person's psyche? That's got to mess you up. Not to mention, the person that you ultimately risked your life to save, you nearly ended up killing him. Not to mention all the victims, because people forget the fact that because of the virus still dormant in Jill's body, it's because of that the Ouroboros virus was even able to be used on different hosts, because it was such a acidic virus that it just would kill its host. But because of Jill's antibody, I'm bad with absolutely terms, but the antibodies of the virus that was dormant in her from her days in Resident Evil 3, that made it so that the virus could be used on anyone without killing them. So have that on your conscience, that everyone infected is inadvertently, but still because of you, in a way. And that's really got to sting. So yeah, I can understand her being vengeful, and I like to see more of that, her being maybe jaded, not caring so much for who they're fighting for, and just being more kind of cynical and really flirt with that, even having hallucinations and flashbacks. Maybe they can still bring the hallucinations I mentioned that they should have done from Resident Evil 3, or maybe she still sees Wesker and thinks he's still alive. Maybe she goes back to those days in Resident Evil 5 when she was basically doing orders for Wesker and infecting more people, even having a point where maybe it goes a flashback of actually possibly killing Chris or something like that, or maybe just having an instant or a moment where she's even contemplating who's friend or foe anymore, and just really just breaking her to the point. And you can't tell me that would not be a compelling tale. I'm not even talking about just fighting the people, just having someone mentally just all over the place. That would really make a fascinating just sequence of events, and just wonder, can she even trust her own eyes? Can she even trust what she feels and what she wants to do? And to me, that's where I think Resident Evil really needs to delve in. And Jill is just like a perfect candidate for that. Just somebody who wants to get back, is so eager to getting back, but because of those events, it's just hard to get over. And realizing that she had 6 years taken from her because of that, and is so jaded by it. And I can really understand it. It'll make me appreciate her even more when she finds ways to overcome it in a way that's organic and makes sense. So I want to go back to what I was mentioning with Claire, and I'll just say this right now. This is something I've always personally wanted. I seem to be the only person, because when Death Island came out, everyone was so happy to see Jill and Leon, and seeing them meet. And I get it, I understand it. But the people I really wanted to see interact with, and we barely got any of it, and it still annoys me this day, is I've always wanted to see the tag team and interactions between Jill and Claire, because we know they've probably met each other many times off screen, but that's not acceptable. I want to see it on screen. And one of my dreams for a new Resident Evil title is have Jill and Claire be the main two characters. And getting back to Claire, I've always felt like Claire and Jill would be really good friends. Not just obviously because they know each other because of Chris, but I really feel like with Jill and Claire, they could just have a moment where they would probably, what they call it, trauma bond, where they could really bond with each other, especially with stuff they probably don't want to talk about or even mention about. We've seen how Jill was talking about the past with, what Wesker, what she went through. We know Claire doesn't want to talk about it all and refuses to mention. So just imagine a really emotional sequence between both of them during a game where they both finally, let all their demons out and just talk about stuff with each other. Both of them have been through a lot. God knows what they're going to go through in the future, and I can just really understand it. And I think they will come out even cooler and more badass because of that, because it's what makes me love these characters. I think it's their humanity and their humanity being tested that really shows that they can be such deeper characters than what Capcom allows them to be. We all know they can kick ass and dominate on whatever game they're in, but seeing them mentally broken and then seeing them refine each other, I would really love that. And Claire and Jill is just a team that I've always wanted to see, and I just feel like that sequence, if they ever do it like that, with Jill coming out about how she's so jaded and just wants to get back those years taken from her, and how she has nearly given in to her anger. And then, Claire maybe possibly talking about, hey, God forbid, the events of Code Veronica X, and, how the whole thing with Steve kind of just broke her, and then finally talking about that with each other. I just think that would be a really emotional, mentally scarring sequence that would really go a long way for both characters and have them coming out even stronger because of that. Because once again, I've said it before, Claire needs a damn comeback, and we've seen what Jill has been shelved before. And as I said, I go back to the video I made on New Year's Eve last year about how I think Jill and Claire are the two characters that seemingly Capcom has done a disservice towards in the past. Seeing them both overcome that would be personally one of the most satisfying things for me personally. That would be a dream, honestly. But once again, it's all in the court of Capcom, as well as fans who accept things like this, accept these changes and stuff, and see how these characters grow and evolve from it. Because I don't want these characters to be the same forever. I like that there's changes, and I like that they challenge things. I just want them to be executed more properly, and I think that's something we all can agree with. But nonetheless, there's a landmine of stuff they can do. And, hopefully Capcom can wake up and realize they have a gold mine of things they can do mentally and psychologically. But let's move on to the next character in our thing. Next up, we have Chris. Now, Chris has probably gone over more changes than probably any of the characters on this list, because he has so many different versions of him. He's all over the place. I still remember the reaction when we saw him in Resident Evil 7 by the community, and how they were just questioning, is that really Chris? Like, who is this guy to this day? Quite a reaction. But the point is that Chris, he has a lot of compelling things they can do in the future. And obviously, I want to focus more on his latest incarnations. But once again, Chris, they have tried to do things in the past with Chris being broken by, him being a soldier and watching his men die. And I have no problem with that. I didn't like it initially. And there's still parts about it I don't like. I've made videos talking about how I feel like the more emotional part of him breaking down and seeing this stuff and, just basically eliminating himself from the battlefield completely with the events of Resident Evil 6. I still feel like they should have done that for Resident Evil 5, making this a more emotional tale. I still think that's the biggest thing Capcom has probably ever bundled next to the whole Claire thing in Code Veronica X. But the point I'm trying to get to is that Chris is kind of in a state where I really do like, and I think the potential can really be there. Last time we've seen him obviously is in Resident Evil Village, and I actually like Resident Evil Village Chris a lot. I like how he acts. I like how he's kind of like, he's a guy that's been here for a while. He has a lot of experience, and he's really jaded because of the events that have happened, because he's seen so much stuff. What hasn't the man seen at this point? He's been there since the beginning, and he's seen all kinds of things from, the viruses taking over, deaths of his comrades, possible death of his comrades coming back to fighting him, betrayals within his own unit, and now the group that he helped start, the BSAA, basically gone rogue. Now, we still don't know the real information of why they went rogue, when it started, and when Chris began to suspect him. We can only speculate at this point. But the point is that I really see a lot of potential what they could do with Chris. And here, we saw in the village, Chris was basically so jaded that he basically created his own unit, I guess with his own set of rules, his own men. Even though I do wish the Hound Wolf Squad was members that we knew about, not random people we've never heard about. But enough on that for another day. But the point is that I like the fact that he basically got to a point where he wanted to make decisions on his own and not just listen to the people who are in charge. And most of us probably do that. He doesn't trust the BSAA anymore. But I feel like they can do a lot with that and really just have Chris just come to a point where, maybe full circle. Chris was the guy who was just always willing to go anywhere and follow the orders and do whatever the one in charge was. But now Chris, I guess seeing what's happened, has decided, you know what? I want to be the guy in charge. I want to be the person calling the shots, because right now, I go back to Death Island and, with the main villain basically bring up the point that, all you do is no matter where you go, you keep getting more and more of your people killed. And what kind of effect that has on him. So I like the repercussions of him being a soldier and watching his men die, and how does he deal with that, and maybe trying to do his best to keep people alive and do everything he can to save them. So maybe with this whole BSAA thing, I want whoever it is that's made the BSA going rogue, I want it to be very personalized. I don't want it to just be some random, jack behind. It's just like, oh, I just wanted power. I want it to be a personal attack. Like, hey, I did this to get back at people like you, Chris. I carefully planned this, and I know how you are. I'm going to use your loved ones against you. I'm really going to put you in an uncomfortable situation. And seeing how Chris is so much older and wiser and have all the experience, I really like to see Chris, do things off the book. I know some people weren't a big fan of how they seem to act really irrational at times in Village, but I still like the fact, because it just shows that he's not the same person same thing with Joe. He's not the same person who walked in that mansion back in 1998. He has changed. He has grown from it. Sometimes not always for the better, but that's what I like to see. I like to see these characters challenge. And to me, just because Chris is a big, bicep boulder punching person doesn't make him any less more vulnerable in situations, especially when people can mentally attack you. We saw this in Resident Evil 6, where, Carla basically got inside Chris's head. So we've seen it happen in the past. I just really like to see it involving even more people that, Chris cares about, and really challenging him, showing him, like, what lines will he cross and which ones will he not cross. And so I like how he is in Village, and I really hope they capitalize on that. And he's got to be really mad and upset by it. I mean, the BSA was something that him, as well as Jill and a few others, put together. And that was the whole goal of the thing, was to fight bioorganic weapons and bioterrorists and stuff like that. And now, the same thing that they helped build is now being used to basically create them. So how does that set you off? That's got to mentally be exhausting, and it's got to leave you just thinking, man, like, what the hell do I got to do? And just really has got to upset him. So in the end, there's a lot of potential they can do with it. And I just think, once again, the future of Resident Evil involves them mentally attacking and breaking its main cast of characters. And with Chris, I mean, how much more damning can you get? I mean, that's got to be frustrating. The thing you helped put together is now the thing being used to basically attack the world, and, with terrorist attacks with bioorganic weapons. So, nonetheless, there's a lot of potential with Chris in future Resident Evil games, and I'm really curious to see what Capcom is going to do. But now I get to the last thing, and I saved this one for last. As I say, save the best for last, because this is the one I'm probably going to get the most flack for, but I stand by what I say, and I want these characters to be deeper than they ever have. And this character, they are my favorite Resident Evil character. They're the character that I love the most, but it seems like they are also the definition of Capcom really being afraid to do anything, and really afraid to just, other than the things we've always used to describe them, do anything outside of that. And that is none other than Miss Ada Wong herself. As I said, Ada Wong is my all-time favorite Resident Evil character. I still remember the day I first met her in the original Resident Evil 4, and wondering, what in the hell is this woman wearing in this dirty-ass place in Spain? But the point I'm trying to get to is that I have the utmost love for Ada. I love her to death. I think she's the coolest character in Resident Evil. However, once again, one of the big parts that I liked when hearing in the Bengal Dragons video was the fact that I like hearing this one party mention talking about how all these characters are all badasses. They've all done crazy, insane feats. What haven't they done? We all know they're cool and badass. Why can't we be more than being cool and badass? And I think Ada, more than any other character, is a character that needs to have this done more than anyone else. And as I said, I love Ada to death. I mean, I think she's the definition of cool. I've always said she's kind of like the James Bond or the Black Widow of the Resident Evil universe. But James Bond and Black Widow, over their course of history, have gone through moments where they are mentally challenged. And we see moments that have broken them and just really challenged the whole status quo of them. And they've gone through insane means of development because of that. The problem here is that Ada Wong, and I love you, Ada, to death, but Ada is kind of like, she kind of does the same thing in every single game. And I can hyperanalyze moments where, if you really want to do it that way, where she's done really, deep things. But the problem is that of all the characters, she's the one that needs probably the most mentally breaking moments in any of these characters. Because let's face it, every time we see Ada in any of these games, she kind of does the same things. You'll see her randomly show up mysteriously out of nowhere, regardless if it's to come in for a mission or to see Leon or whatever the case. She'll randomly show up, mysteriously, and you'll be wondering, oh my God, where'd she come from? How long has she been there? So show up randomly. Come in here and be like, oh, maybe crack a, wise liner or something like that, that she's here. Then give a context speech of basically saying, I don't have time to explain why I don't have time to explain. And then just as quickly as she shows up, she's gone. So basically, in short, show up, look cool, look badass, say a few lines, and then ditch. Listen, I love it the first few times, but when that's all she does, it gets frustrating. And she's always the same way, that same stoic way. And nothing wrong with being stoic. But the problem is when this character is over 2 decades old since they were created, and they've always liked this, it gets me really annoyed because it's like, why is it all the other characters can have moments where we really see them, go through the ringer mentally and get broken by it, but Ada's always got to be the same thing. And I may hear the common argument, oh, well, Ada's not someone who breaks. Guys, I think every human being on the face of the earth breaks down. And breaks down multiple times. There's no person alive on this planet that doesn't have breakdowns. It's going to happen. You live life long enough. But getting back to Ada, why wouldn't she? In fact, honestly, I think she's probably more inclined to have the biggest breakdown of any character if you just kind of look at all the stuff she's been through and how she acts and her connections with so many other people in the franchise. But in terms of breaking down, I just feel like these are moments that make us humanize and really understand the characters more. But it just seems like Capcom just wants Ada to be the same thing over and over and over again. They'll take a baby step or two, but they never want to contribute and go deep dive into it. Because Ada, to me, while I don't agree with this, I do understand a lot of people just saying, hey, what does she really do? She's just a femme fatale that pops in, looks hot and attractive, flirts with, whoever, and then leaves. And I get it. I know she's more than that. But once again, Capcom doesn't do a lot that make me think otherwise, or I should say other people think otherwise. I know she's deeper than that, but you got to show it. You just can't give a simple baby step or one sequence and then just never contribute to it. And I honestly, once again, I love Ada, but I would like to see her kind of have a real big breakdown. One of the things I've always wanted to see is her in her own video game. Or at least one of the major players. I think that's one thing Separate Ways proved to a lot of people, that Ada could easily hold her own game. But I want this game to be free of any Leon. And yes, I do want a resolution between her and Leon, an actual resolution, not some BS, I'm here, I'm gone, goodbye, and all that stuff, and this Leo everything, warranted. But that can come later. I think this needs to happen beforehand, because I want to see Ada and how she is among people that necessarily probably don't even care about her or even really remotely give a damn about her. Because let's just be honest, Ada's got to be one of the most loneliest. I think she's a definition of loneliness in Resident Evil. Because think about it like this. Ada's a character who's probably burnt God knows how many bridges in her life. So she doesn't really have anyone she can really confide in. Maybe outside of Leon from the few times she sees him. She really doesn't have, outside of maybe Leon and maybe a person or two, how many people really remotely probably give a damn about her whether she lives or dies? That's got to be lonely as heck. And we always say, oh, Ada puts on a good act. And that's my whole thing. I always feel like Ada does a good job putting on a good act. It's what makes her effective. But that's got to break a person eventually. And it's really got to put a person through a real mental ringer. I mean, how does Ada deal with that after the mission? What does she do the moments we don't see her? Like, there's so many things I've always wondered with Ada, but Capcom always hides behind the whole mysterious thing. It's like, dude, come on now. Stop with this crap. You can still have her being cool and awesome, but you can have her being even more humanized and stuff. I mean, I just feel like, in times where no one's around, she probably shows a lot of her weaknesses and stuff. I still believe this. I feel like if she were to break down, it'd be a massive breakdown, because I feel like a lot of her emotions, she just really buries deep within. And I can see just finally something eventually triggering and just letting it all out. And I know it may seem, oh man, that's a sign of weakness. But once again, guys, Bengal Dragon made a good point. Think of some of the coolest characters you know of. He mentioned in his video good comparisons of some of the most badass and cool characters having breakdowns. Like from God of War Kratos or Snake from Metal Gear Solid. I'll give you one of my personal favorites. Little fun fact: there are 2 movies in my life that I consider perfect movies. Not that I think they are 100% perfect, but just perfect in terms of I would never change a single thing about them. One is 12 Angry Men, starring Henry Fonda. I love that movie to death. And the other is Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. Now, Batman is my all-time favorite fictional character, if you're curious. And one of the most compelling sequences from that movie is Batman, taking off his mask, going to his parents' grave, and asking and begging for forgiveness, and basically crying because he didn't know that he might possibly be happy, because he thought he would forever live out his time being Batman and fighting criminals because he still hasn't gotten over his parents' death. And he never dreamed that he would ever be happy, because he possibly might have fallen in love with the woman Andrea. And that's a really compelling sequence to me. It makes me love and appreciate Batman even more. And that's Batman. So yes, the whole argument, them breaking down the beat because they're weak. Everybody's got to have signs of weakness. Another good example would be Rambo. When Rambo broke down. But the point I'm trying to make here is that I think Ada really needs one of these moments, because, I mean, how long can you be that cool, solo, spy, mercenary type character with hardly any connections before it just gets you? I like to think of Ada possibly, after all she's done, maybe just starts to really question. She has moments, in several ways where she's questioning just taking the orders whoever gives it to her. And we've seen a few sequences in Resident Evil 6 kind of her just doing her own thing. But I really like to see her possibly wanting more semblance of a life outside of just being simply that cool secret agent type character that basically does things just for the money and stuff. And I like to think that because of the actions of Leon and others, that it makes her want things like that. But the thing is, Capcom's got to show it. I like to show signs of weakness, because I think it's those weak moments that make us think and appreciate more from these characters. It makes me think these characters are more badass and cool. I mean, take all these, iconic moments in fictional characters' history of them at their lowest moments, and then the story of them making that comeback, coming back from that. That's the stories that people love to see, and I would just love to see an Ada tale where we really get to dive into what makes the woman who she is, how she is outside of the stuff, and how she deals with that. And also just, I'd like to really tackle that loneliness. I mean, Ada doesn't really have friends. I mean, outside of Leon, who really can Ada really confide and really talk to and stuff? And I like to hopefully wonder one day that maybe Ada could possibly overcome that and want something like that, because I think it's possible that she could do that. And it would be a big comeback story from when she first debuted, being simply that mercenary, that spy character just trying to fulfill her orders, to someone being more than that. And it'll be quite a tale. But once again, Capcom, I'll just say this right now. You can't be afraid to fail. I think it's a greater sin to not try something than to maybe do something and it just not work out, but at least you attempted it. Don't be afraid to give Ada, a lot more humanizing traits and stuff. I don't want to have her be the same cold person forever. I get it and I understand. I'm also happy you didn't have her just turn into that in Resident Evil 4 Remake. I know she had little baby steps, but for future things, especially since we haven't seen her since Resident Evil 6, I would love to just see a main game with Ada, no Leon, just see how she interacts with other people, especially if they don't have the deep connection with her, and see how she deals with that. And maybe deals with the fact that possibly no one really cares or wants her alive or gives a damn about her, how she deals with that. And I think you can get a really compelling psychological and mentally fracturing tale. And I think it can make Ada even more cooler and awesome than she already is. Bottom line is this. I love these Resident Evil characters. I love them to death. They're characters that have stood the test of time for me. But it's time we make these characters even greater than they already are. And it's time that we make them even deeper than they already are. And I guess it's time that we break them. But not just break them and keep them broken like poor Claire. Let's break them, build them up from scratch, and make them even better than ever before. And that was a little bit longer than my normal videos, but I do want to thank you if you have stuck around this long. And at the end of the day, I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, but I've never been that type of person that just wants to stay at being good. You know, I know the games I've really enjoyed the games. I've had a lot of blasts with this franchise, but I never want to get to a point where we just stuck here doing the same thing over and over again. And I always feel like the secret to being successful is you always have to look at ways to get better. And to me, I just feel like analyzing these characters' psyche, going really deep mentally with them, and having events trigger that really challenges them mentally more than physically, and maybe have a combination of both, is really the key to what they should do for newer Resident Evil titles. But once again, I've always said this, that is my ultimate opinion, and I'm always interested to hear what other people have to say, what they feel about this. And I've only mentioned the 5 major characters from the franchise. There's tons of Resident Evil characters that I didn't mention that you could easily do, like the Barrys and the Rebeccas and the Shevas and etc. etc. But at the end of the day, I want to hear what you guys think. For the main characters, as well as other characters I didn't list, what would you like to see done with them in the future, and what do you think ultimately about just psychological scarring and warfare and mental battles and stuff? Because I keep thinking of, like, what if these characters get put through the ringer, like kind of a comparison to how Silent Hill characters are put through the ultimate mental ringer, because those poor guys, oh my god, it's more than just physically fighting whatever they're physically fighting on screen. It's all the mental anguish that they go through. So it's something I'm really curious to see how you guys think about Resident Evil characters going through things like that and being mentally really challenged and tested, because I see it so many times with other franchises that are really going deep with their characters. And one of the biggest reasons I love JRPGs is from the storytelling and how deep they go with their characters, and how these characters go through so much. Yeah, they're cool and badass, but they're more than just cool and badass. They're really deep, evolving, growing characters that we grow to love and really appreciate it. And I really hope that Capcom really goes in that step. But ultimately, I want to hear your guys' feedback. What do you think about all this? What characters do you have possible ideas of what they could do in future Resident Evil titles? Let me know down in the comment section down below. But before I turn it off this video, I do want to say something that's not connected to the top of this video, but something else, and I do think it needs to be said, is I want to personally thank all the people that have joined this channel and subscribed to this channel over this year, because this year has definitely been my most successful year by like 20 miles. I came back, I started this channel in 2019, did it for a year, didn't really stick and all, but it is what it is. I came back in 2022, of all things, late 2022, I think in November, of Resident Evil Reverse, of all things. I was just uploading simple clips of me playing, and eventually, New Year's Eve of last year, I did the whole "Why Does Capcom Hate Jill and Claire" video, and I got a lot of feedback from that. From that point on to now, I've grown so much because of you guys, and I just want to say thank you to all the people that have joined the channel. Thank you for all the comments. I love interacting with you guys. I like hearing your guys' personal takes and opinions. And one thing I've always said, guys, I'm not inclined to having an opinion that doesn't personally agree with me. I'm not inclined to having a conversation, because I like hearing different perspectives. It gets annoying when you just hear that same annoying voice, you know, me talking about my own voice all the time. I like to hear a different person's perspectives, how they view things. Because having a different perspective, I think, goes a long way. As seeing things you didn't really see in a way you didn't possibly, you know, think was possible from. And I think that having that different point of view really goes a long way. So I really enjoy hearing the feedback in the comments. And obviously, it's not just Resident Evil I talk about. It's just the thing I talk about the most. There's so many games that come out that I'm really anxious to play and enjoy. But overall, the most important thing is I had a lot of fun doing this year. 2023 was an excellent year for games for me personally, an excellent year for this channel, and I enjoyed making these videos. And I can only hope that 2024 is even better. But ultimately, in short, thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. I had a lot of fun doing this, and hopefully we can have even more fun in 2024. And let me know what stuff you guys are anticipating for the year. It don't have to be just Resident Evil. It could be anything you're looking forward to for the next year. There's a lot of things I plan on doing, but nonetheless, this video is going on long enough. Let's end it right here. That is going to be it. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I can see you guys back on the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you guys had a wonderful 2023, and hopefully 2024 as we're on the crust of the new year is even better than that. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you all later. Peace.
Until next time, Leon.